Let's work on the form submission. And for this, inside of our form, we first of all need to add a very important tag. And that's the CSRF token tag, which ensures that we don't get an error when this form is submitted. It's a security mechanism which basically is there to ensure that only a form which is really on our side is able to talk to our server and make changes there. So that's an important addition to the form. Now I also want to add an action here to set the URL to which a request should be sent when the form is submitted. And I then also want to set the method. Now the method should be sent to post, but what should the action be? Now that can be any URL of your choice in the end, but I want to send it to this post detail page on which we already are, but now, and that's the difference, as a post request. So that in the post request, if validation should fail, we can render that same template again, but then with the form pre-populated with the user input and potential error messages. Hence, in post detail, the action here should lead to this URL, and to not hard code the path on my own, I will use the URL tag here, and then it's the name of the URL which I need, so post detail page, like this, and then the dynamic segment value that should be inserted. And for this, of course, I already got access to my post here on the entire page, so it is just post.id. Slug, I mean, post.slug. So the slug of the post for which I already loaded this page. And with that, if we then submit the form later, a post request should be sent to /posts and then /whatever slug is relevant. At the moment, we don't have a view that handles this. It would reach this URL, since that's the URL we'll send the request to. But in the view for this URL, the single post view, I currently don't have a way of handling incoming post requests. We only handle GET requests, and for those we return the post detail data. Hence here, I really want to add more custom logic, and I don't want to use the detail view to just return the details about a post. Hence, here I will actually import from Django.views, and I'll import view here. So this very generic view from which we can inherit. And I will get rid of that detail view import. Then I will inherit from view here instead of detail view, and therefore now restructure the logic here a little bit. For example, I'll add my own get and my own post methods here to handle incoming get and post requests. Now in both methods, we have to accept self and request. And now we'll first of all have to make the get method work again. Here, I now basically want to go back to what we had before. I want to fetch my post by using the post model and getting a post where the slug is equal to the slug I'm receiving here. And therefore, we can accept slug as a parameter and use that here then, because we know that this get method will be reached, or this view as a whole will be reached for this URL, which has this slug path here. So I go back to fetching the single post manually again, and then here in get, I return the render method into which I pass the request, where I then render block/post-detail HTML and pass in my context. And context now is a dictionary again, where I expose the post, like this, but where I also want to expose the post tags and the comment form. So we add post_tags and get that with post.tags.all and expose the comment form by instantiating comment form like this. And then we can get rid of get context data because we're not using a detail view anymore. And here we then pass context into the render method. So we basically went back to controlling this logic manually again, But we do so because we now don't just fetch a post, but we also have to handle a form, the creation of a form, and soon also the submission of a form. Hence, we can now also get rid of template name and model here. But we did all of that because we now also want to add the post method. Here, in the end, I want to validate the submitted form and then either add that comment and do something or show that form again with the errors added to it. So therefore, what I'll do here is I'll create my comment form by instantiating comment form, but to that we can pass request.post because that contains the submitted data, as you learned. Then I want to check if comment form is valid. And if it is valid, I want to call comment form save. And we can call save on that form because it is based on a model form. Don't forget this. So that would then add this comment to the database. Thereafter, I want to redirect. So for this, I'll import from Django HTTP. I'll import HTTP response redirect. So that down here, we can call redirect and then redirect somewhere else. Now, the somewhere else part should be a URL, which I again want to create dynamically instead of creating it myself. And for that, we can import from Django URLs and import the reverse function, which allows us to construct those URLs automatically by just using the names of URLs. And here, I want to create a URL which points at this post detail page again. I want to redirect to this page on which I already am, but I want to redirect to it so that a GET request is sent to it again. Because I then want to get this post again and also all the comments of this post where this added comment should then be a part of. So here I want to redirect to the post detail page and provide my args, so the dynamic segments of this route, of this URL, which of course should be the slug of the page from which we're coming from. Because in the end, I just want to reload that page, but with a redirect. So how do I know what page we're on here? How do I know where to redirect to? Now keep in mind that we only reached this post method in this view because a post request, because of method post, was sent to the detail page where the slug is already part of the URL. So indeed, we should be getting the slug already here as an extra parameter, just as we get it in the get method, because the slug is part of the URL for which this view is reached. And you learned that this dynamic URL data, these extra parameters which we have in our URL, are passed as parameters to our view functions then. So we get the slug here already, and I just use that again for redirecting then. But when we redirect, it will be a GET request which is fired thereafter. Now that all happens if the form is valid. If we don't make it into this if block, so if the form is invalid, I instead want to render the template again. So I'll copy that render method. And here I then want to pass in my context, where in the end, I want to again provide the single post, of course, the tags, and my comment form, but now the comment form from up there, which contains the user entered data and any potential errors we might have detected. However, since we still also need the post and the post tags, we need to ensure that this data is fetched again, so I still want to fetch my post here as well, if we need to return the rendered template again. So we fetch the post again for the given slug, prepare our context, and render the template again, if the form is invalid. If it is valid, we instead make it in here, save the post, and we're good. At least, almost. Because one important step is missing here. When we save our comment form, we in the end create a new comment because this is a model form. Now the problem here is that we exclude the post field. we exclude it because that sets up the relation to a post, and that's not something the user should enter here. The user should just enter a comment, and the relation should be set automatically to the post on which page we left the comment. But that means that when the form is submitted, we as a developer need to make sure that the correct post is linked here. So we basically need to edit the submitted data and add a reference to the post before this is being saved. We can achieve this by adding an extra named argument here, the commit argument, and set this to false. When doing that, calling save will not hit the database, but instead create a new model instance. So in our case, a new comment. And then we can still edit this comment before we manually call save on it again to then save it to the database. So here we can edit comment to set the post field, which our comment model has, and set it to the post to which this comment should be related. Now we do fetch the post down there anyways, so let's simply move that code up here, and then we can set comment post equal to the post of the slug for which this entire view was reached in the end. And then once we did that, we manually call save. This will then allow us to take the user input, add extra data, and save that edited data back to the database. And then we redirect. And with that, we should have all the logic in place for fetching user input, validating it, saving it if valid, and showing errors if it's not valid. So let's give this a try. If I reload this single post page and I enter some data here, if I click Save Comment, this page is reloaded and I don't get an error. I also don't see the comment yet because we haven't added any logic for this, but it looks like it worked. I also have no error here. To verify whether it worked, I'll open up a new terminal tab and dive into the shell with Python manage py shell. And here from blog.models, I'll import the comment model to quickly check how many comments we have in the database. And that's looking good. We have one comment here. So if I now access this one comment and I print the username, that's Max. If I have a look at the text here, then this is awesome. And if I have a look at the post, it's related to a post object. And if I dive into the title of that post, it's mountain hiking. So this works, the comment was saved, and it was linked to the correct post. So therefore that is all working. Now let's try submitting an invalid page here. And for this, I'll open up the developer tools and select this name and remove the required attribute so that the browser doesn't stop me from submitting something invalid here, which proves that we need server-side validation because browser-side validation is really just there to improve the user experience. It's easy to circumvent, as you see. So with that, I'm submitting an invalid form, and I am therefore reloading this page, and I get my error here. This field is required. Now we can look into the styling here. We could highlight this invalid field in greater detail, but the main thing here is that it works, that we do see this error. So with that, let's now work on the way we present this error.